Thank you. Ms. Eshoo.
Thanks again, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for your patience in waiting and for the testimony that you've given. I wanted to highlight something that appeared in the New York Times last week, and Chairman Waxman made reference to it, but I want to read this, and with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to place the full article in the record of the hearing.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. The story starts out, when food industry giants like Kellogg want to ensure that American consumers are being protected from contaminated products, they rely on private inspectors like Eugene A. Hatfield. So last spring, Mr. Hatfield headed to the Peanut Corporation of America plant in southwest Georgia to make sure its chopped nuts, paste, and peanut butter were safe to use in things as diverse as granola bars and ice cream. The peanut company, though, knew in advance that Mr. Hatfield was coming. He had less than a day to check the entire plant, which processed several million pounds of peanuts a month. Mr. Hatfield, 66, an expert in fresh produce, was not aware that peanuts were readily susceptible to salmonella, which he was not required to test for anyway. And while he was inspecting the plant to reassure Kellogg and other food companies of its suitability as a supplier, the Peanut Corporation was paying for his efforts. You can tell where I'm going with this. Now here's a quote. The overall food safety level of this facility was considered to be superior. That's in capital letters. He concluded in his March 27, 2008 report for his employer, the American Institute of Baking, which performs audits for major food companies. A copy of the audit was obtained by the New York Times. Now it seems to me we've got a big problem here. We know, according to your testimony, what it costs to do inspections. It's not cheap. But it seems to me that outside of national security, there are two major functions that the government has. And I've always kept this with me, from local government to the Congress: public health and public safety. And this issue bears both responsibilities. We're now not only talking about preventing, we're talking about life and death in our system, in the American system that should be the gold standard of the world. So for the record, what I'd like to know is, do you think that this third party, these private inspectors, are really the best way to go? I mean, it's said in this article that the contributions of third-party audits to food safety are the same as the contribution of mail-order diploma mills to education. Why don't we start over here? I heard your comments earlier. Why don't we start over here with Mr. Lugg?
Thank you for the question. That's a very good subject that you raise, and that is...
I know it is, but I want to know what you think of these private inspectors. Do you think they should be retained? Do you think they have a place in the system? Do you think that we can reform it so that private inspectors have to exercise more responsibility? Tell me what you think, representing your... who are you representing? Let's see.
Chiquita Brands International.
Right.
Our philosophy...
Do you think they should be retained? Do you think they have a place in the system? Do you think that we can reform it so that private inspectors have to exercise more responsibility? Tell me what you think, representing your... who are you representing? Let's see.
Chiquita Brands International.
Right.
Our philosophy has been from day one, we cannot rely on third-party inspectors. Mm-hmm. We do believe that there should be in place a system for licensing third-party inspectors, and they should be regularly brought in to keep their licenses enforced. And
so they're not paid by the very people that they're inspecting. Is that what you're saying?
Whoever pays, I didn't address the payment issue.
I see.
But I just am...
Well, how does what you just said, how does it differ from what we have today?
Well, we're very concerned that standards are different depending on the audit firms that do the audit.
I see.
And if we always go back to the Codex Alimentarius, which is a fundamental document, mm-hmm. and auditors are licensed based on their knowledge and so forth of how to conduct inspections, there should be an improvement in the third-party audit, regardless of who pays for it.
Good. Mr. Stanza?
Congresswoman, I would say that private inspectors are an essential and important part of our food safety system today.
But what I just read...
Just because we have one example where it didn't work.
So you think it's the only one?
I didn't say it's the only one, nor that it's the end of the solution. But private inspection is one way that private sector companies do audit each other. And that's an important part. No one is more concerned than Kellogg in that story that the people they hired to do inspections didn't do an adequate job.
But where's the safety valve in this?
But here's where I think is important when we get to this legislation. Should FDA incorporate third-party private inspectors? And if that becomes the case, then there's got to be a much more rigorous certification of inspectors.
So you're acknowledging that there are holes in what the system is now.
Absolutely.
Good. All right. Well, at least you're doing that. I'm glad. And Mr. Chairman, I think that this is when we do a bill, we have to pay a lot of attention to this area. And I think that it's important to have a standalone in HHS. I worry a great deal that what Congress is going to fall back on is what we've done with so many other areas of FDA and fund it through some kind of user fee. And I don't think that's the way to approach this. I think that we're skating on very, very thin ice. I also think that Congress should be taking a look at an overlapping term for the FDA commissioner so that it's never politicized. I think it should move, it should be a 6-year term and not be subject to the whims and the of politics that we have seen. That hasn't come up today, but I think there's a lot of work to be done relative to the FDA, and if we come up with all kinds of reforms, but we don't fund what needs to be funded, we're going to be right back here with these good people hearing testimony all over again. So thank you. I was glad to return from the floor. I did want to ask the questions, and I thank the witnesses and the chairman. This is a big issue for us in the country.